Hello, troops. Welcome. It is I again, AncientSwan. I don't know who the fork you thought you were expecting, but you got me. And if that's a surprise to you, then I really don't know what to say. Welcome back to another wee CS2 map-making guide made by me for you, especially you, because you are absolutely 100% still my favorite. This is map guide number 4, and in today's short lesson we will be covering the magic of resources, especially trees, because I bloody love trees. And then also a wee bit of climate stuff, and then absolutely no detailing whatsoever. Why no detailing? Well, stick around and I'll let you know just as soon as we don't get to that bit. You'll see, there are reasons. So let's get started, shall we? No point in fannying around. Let's begin like a kingpin. Resources. Now, this shouldn't be a difficult thing to do. Resources are simple enough. I hope you all remember what we're looking at now. It's been the source of our map lessons so far. This is a map based on the ancient Indonesian city, Trowolan, and we're about to paint the bejesus right out of it. So, up to the top left of the screen, into the workspace, and where it says map, underneath this you will see the word resources. This should be self-explanatory, and I'm going to assume you're smart enough to know to click this, so click it like a genius. And now, up the other side of the screen, you will see some icons magically appear. First one on the left is our ore brush. The ore brush, by the way, is also what the game uses for coal. Next to that is the oil. You will not be surprised to know that this paints oil. Next to that, on its right, we have the icon for painting our fertile land. This is where our map's players will put their farms. And finally, on the far right is the button for making America great again. Oh, wait, no, sorry, that's a completely different far right. This far right is for painting our underground water. Sorry about that. I get confused sometimes. Anyhow, the painting is simple enough. Simply click your chosen resource and paint it wherever you think it should be. Thing is, though, just where should it be? And so I have my own thoughts on this, but because my thoughts are often the simplest imaginable and can usually be beaten by a seagull, I recently also put this to the CS2 modding community on quite a few different Discord channels. So let's go through what we all had to say. Regarding ore, or coal, if you look at the natural world around you, and I mean the real world, like the one outside, not the game world, you will find that ore and coal are pretty uniformly distributed almost everywhere underground. It's at the bottom of the valleys, it's under the flattest of land, but it's also in those there hills and mountains, all the way up to the tip of the tallest peak. Personally, I come from a pretty flattish part of Scotland that is so riddled with underground coal mines that until recently much of it wasn't safe to build modern houses on. They kept sinking and the homeowners were less than impressed. And then also, just south of where I once lived, is what used to be a hill. Except it's no longer a hill. It's just a space where a hill used to be because there was coal there as well, and my grandfather needed it all to keep heating his baths. This world is filled with giant open-cast mines where us humans have gouged massive holes out of the earth in an attempt to get the stuff that makes our phones. Sometimes we refill them with water to make a pretty lake, sometimes we just keep digging. So, if you feel like being realistic with your resources placement, then Aura is an easy one. Just paint it wherever you please, wherever makes you happiest. If you do put it on a hillside, then that player now has the opportunity to terraform that hillside and dig a big giant hole for his mine too. For us today, this map is very flat, so nothing to worry about. Now, for me personally, I always like to make sure that all possible resources are included in the starting square. I just like to make sure the player has the option to use it early if they want. You don't have to do that, of course. You can paint your ore off in the distance and give the player another goal to work towards if you like. But not for me. For me, it's everything in the starting square. So I click the ore button, I'm going to go down the bottom right, and I'm going to make my brush size a bit bigger because I'm lazy, and bigger brushes cover more area quicker. Never underestimate the efficiency of a lazy man, and we're going to paint like Picasso. As well as including some in the starting square, I like to include as many options in as many places as possible. Why? Well, my thinking is that if I, for example, only include a little oil in one or two very specific points of the map, then every single player who ever plays on this map is almost guaranteed to have their ore industry in the exact same place as everyone else. But I don't like that. I like players' cities to be completely unique from one another. And one way to ensure that each city built here is unique is to make sure the player has as many options as possible, which means giving them many different places to put their ore industry. You could, of course, if you wanted to, absolutely cover this map 100% in ore. But let's not take the piss. And here's my ore. I've painted some continuous seams, but one thing I will add here is that if you don't like what you've painted, you can always click the right mouse button to simply delete your mistakes. If only the rest of life was that easy, can you imagine? Just deleting your ex, or even better, your mother-in-law with a right click. I swear I would delete so many people. I'd be like an evil Oprah, and you get a deletion, and you get a deletion, and you get a deletion. Yeah, it's probably a good idea that you don't put me in charge of the country. Anyway, our ore is ored. So what's next? May as well do the next one on the screen, which be the oil. Again, myself and the modding community were pretty much in agreement here, but there is no need for you to listen to us. Paint your oil at the top of the mountain if you wanna. But for this map today, we'll try to keep it a bit more realistic. The thing is about oil, it's very liquidy, you know. It kind of flows and it follows gravity. In fact, it's been following gravity for quite a few million years now. And that's probably why I've never seen an oil rig at the top of a mountain. Very, 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 very slightly hilly areas. Sure, there's a few of those. But mountain tops, nah. Again, though, on this map, it's almost a moot point. It's a flat map. And so the flat area is where we will put the oil. So again, I'm going to include a bit into the starting square. And again, I'm also going to put quite a lot of it in many different areas of the map. Also, again, for the reason that I think the player should have loads of different options on where to put his industry and shouldn't have his city constrained by limited amounts and limited placement options. One thing to also mention here is that oil is often found underwater. Have you ever seen an oil rig in a tree? No, me neither. Seen plenty out at sea though. It's not relevant in this map, as it is not a coastal map. But don't feel too shy in putting your oil underwater if you want to. It can give a player a challenge they're not used to, and people like a challenge. One good thing about cities' skylines too is that unlike in CS1, it is possible here to paint over one resource with another, so I can, for example, have my ore areas and my oil areas in the same place. In CS1 they had to be separate, but here in CS2 I can just go mad with it. Just like this, and now I have plenty of options for players to build both their ore and their oil industry. I want your city to be unique and not the same as everyone else's. And so we move on to number 3, the fertile land. This one is a little more limited though. Again, there aren't many farms at the top of Mount Everest, but there are many on hillsides and in hilly areas, so paint your hills a bit with fertile land if you wish. A recurring thought, though, is that fertile land generally follows areas that are a bit more wet, such as along riversides or in valleys constantly replenished with lovely freshwater stuff. And so for that reason, I generally paint my fertile land in exactly those areas. So here we go. Click resource button number 3. The one that looks like wheat, and give the player of your map lots of options for where to put their farms. Just how much of this you want to paint is entirely up to you. I try not to make everything look too uniform. Things look a bit weird if they are too uniform, so for purely aesthetic reasons, it's worth changing the size and strength of your brush every so often. So some riversides are filled with the yellow stuff and others maybe not so much. Life do be like that, and now we have a map that's pretty much filled with all the good stuff. Not too full, I hope, otherwise it might look a bit silly. That's not to say that I'm not an absolute psychopath. Some of my maps definitely have more resources than others, but they do generally also follow the terrain and the rules of planet Earth and physics and nature and stuff, but also, now and again, I have to admit my own personal whim. I make maps. I do not, however, make the laws of the universe. Now, onto the last bit, underground water. Underground water is one of those resources that is rarely used in most people's cities, but now and again there may be a reason you'll want to get your water supply from underground instead of from the river. For example, you may have mismanaged and accidentally polluted your rivers, and now your only choice if you want to keep your wee Sims alive is to get your water from underground, because now your river's greatest resource is plastic straws and other people's shit. Not my shit, of course.
Other people's? I don't do that because I'm pure like an angel.
So for those players who will occasionally need a place to get clean drinking water, let's add some underground sources. Clicking option 4, the icon that looks just like one of my enemy's salty tears, I will, as per usual, make sure to add a wee bit into the starting square. For this resource, I'm also not going to be as generous as with the others. The water doesn't need to be absolutely everywhere, just the odd bit here and there is enough, I think. If you do disagree, then be sure to bash it into your keyboard and leave a comment letting me know below. And here we are for this map. It's not too much, and it is pretty evenly spread around the map. Same reason as always. Options, 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 options. More than one is generally a good thing. So we've clicked and painted with all the resource buttons, so we're done, right? Wrong. You forgot the trees. I bloody love trees. I'm pretty sure I've mentioned it before, but I don't think you quite understand. I love them. I love trees. I love the way they be all brown and woody, but at the same time all soft and green. I love the way they just stand there, some of them for thousands of years, until some idiot chops them down. I love the way they've looked almost the same since the dinosaurs kicked ass. And I love the way they keep me warm around the campfire at night. I love how I feel like I'm walking through ancient times whenever I walk through a forest. I don't know, I'm weird like that. I bloody love trees, though, honestly. So let's do some trees. What trees? AncientSwan, what trees? I can almost hear you scream, which is a good question because there is no tree button. So where do we find them? So we're going to go to the bottom of the screen and click that white box named Add Object, and then over to the right of the screen, and there's two ways we can find them. First is to just click on the word foliage and then trees. And there's a list of tree stuff mixed in with a load of bushes. These can also be split further by trees found in Europe or trees found in North America. The second method is just, with the all option selected, go to the search bar and type the word tree. And now here's a list of all our options with some other stuff mixed in. Now, obviously, depending on how real you want to be, it makes sense in your European-based map to only use European trees. And in your North American-style map, to only use North American trees. You don't have to, and to be honest, I suspect almost nobody playing your map is going to notice if you've gone and used an Adler tree in your map of Mar-a-Lago, Florida. And anyone who does notice, or even worse, dares to complain about your misuse of trees is, in my honest opinion, a giant dipshit. So I will admit here that I usually just use my favorite trees in all my maps. But there is another reason for doing that, especially evident in this map here. What would that be? Well, ladies and gents, if you remember, today with this map, we are in Indonesia, and Indonesia is neither in Europe nor is it in North America, because, completely unbeknownst to the makers of this game, there is indeed a world which exists outside of the Northern Hemisphere. I know I was shocked when I found out too. I even went there just to check, and I can confirm that it is real. There are indeed parts of this planet Earth which are in the south. Us British sent all our criminals there once, and as far as I'm aware, most of them have successfully stayed there ever since. But if there are no Southern Hemisphere trees in this game, how will I possibly paint some trees into this map? Well, the answer is this: artistic license. So, a brief moment ago, I mentioned to you that I do have some favorite trees for using in my maps. That's right, I do love trees, but not all trees are equal. Some trees are more equal than others. Why, though? What's wrong with the others? Well, you see, some of them are just too tiny. The fact is that for most people, the vast majority of their city building game is spent way up here at this godlike view, up in the clouds, looking down on the peasants and their shitty little traffic jams. The vast majority of your game is spent way up high, zoomed way out. Sure, you zoom in now and again, but I suspect that for most people, most of that time is way up here, and so I like a tree that's still visible from way up high. The fact is that when you zoom out to this lofty height of the gods, that all those wee trees will just pop out of existence right in front of your eyes. And the sadder fact is that this game is pretty resource hungry, and a lot of players are going to have their settings turned down low in order to not have their city run at the speed of continental drift. This will also then compound the misery of trees just not existing when you're zoomed out too high. For example, look at these ones. These right here are the European poplar trees, and sure, they look all lovely and tree-like when we're zoomed in at ground level, but watch what happens when I zoom out high enough. Tree, 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 no tree. Where did they go? Trees. No trees! Trees! No trees. So look, it's up to you. If you want to use these trees, then go right ahead. But personally, for me, I prefer not to. If I can't see it when I'm high as then I'm not interested. So, what trees am I a fan of? Well, as if by magic, someone who looks like me, walks like me, talks like me, smells like me, and just don't give a France like me, has gone and planted some trees already. So I've gone and painted all the trees. Some of them you can't even see because we're zoomed way out, but trust me, they are there. From left to right, we have the apple tree, the birch tree, the coconut palm tree, the European alder, the European chestnut, that poplar tree, it's there too. And then there is the Florida palm, and then the North American hickory tree, then the linden tree, then the London plane. Next is the oak tree, then the pine tree, then the royal palm tree. Next is the spruce tree, and then finally the Sylvester palm tree. All trees have been painted, and if you look, you'll see that you can't see. Some of them just disappear from a distance. In fact, of the trees that we can see from this high up, some of them can only really be seen at the right angle. Change that angle a little, and poof, away those ones go too. And I've got my settings all the way up, by the way. I'm running a decent system, but some of those trees are still vanishing when looking from the wrong angle. It seems to me that the coconut palm, poplar, Florida palm, and royal palms trees are especially pointless. Even when half zoomed in, they are almost invisible. Meanwhile, the European alder, the chestnut, American hickory, oak and pine trees are a bit more worthwhile being used. It's all relative, of course. If you like to get down, close and dirty when playing, then none of this is important, but I just have a thing about seeing what I'm doing, and so today in this map I'll be using the trees that make my eyes happy. The fact that none of these trees actually exist in real-world Indonesia is all beside the point. I'm not the one at Colossal Order who decided the Southern Hemisphere doesn't exist. Anyhow, at this point I'm going to have to delete all these trees I've planted, which usefully brings me on to something useful, and so you might want to know. With the tree tool selected, go to the bottom right of the screen and you'll see two icons. There's an icon which allows me to plant just one tree at a time, and then there's the icon next to it, which allows me to plant multiple. And as always, by using the right mouse button, I can delete the ones I don't like. That's not the useful thing though, what's worth also noting here. With the multi-tree icon selected, some more options become available. Go down to the snapping list and its most right icon, that wee square. This allows you to delete trees by type or delete all trees regardless of type. At the moment the box is blue, and so it's only letting me delete those Sylvester Palms trees that I've chosen. But if you just hate everything and want to delete everything, then unselect that wee white box. And now, preferably also with the brush strength at 100, you can right-click and just remove absolutely everything, which is what I'm going to do. And bish, bash, bosh, job done. Goodbye, trees, for now. So anyway, I've picked my favorite trees, so let's replant them. And now we return once again to that age-old question. Where do we plant them? For this, there was some consensus and also a little disagreement. But the general thoughts are, screw it, they are trees and they grow pretty much everywhere. Now, there are some people like me who love trees too much, and that's why you'll often see my maps just covered in trees, as if the entire world was a rainforest before man came along to tear down paradise and put up a parking lot. However, this is not true, and actually quite a fair bit of planet Earth is without trees. Really, it depends on which part of planet Earth we are making our map. So if you are making a map on a real-world place, then it may be worth checking out Google Earth to get a good idea of tree coverage. Here's Indonesia, and, well, I guess for tree spammers like me, Indonesia is great, because it really is a rainforest-type country. Anywhere that mankind doesn't touch within 2 weeks gets covered by a green thing by week 3. Another good thing to do is to check out Google Street View. If you're lucky, you might find a drone shot that someone's taken. I love finding a nice drone shot from the sky when making a map. Everything then becomes so much easier. Here is one I found earlier, not a drone shot, but some gorgeous Indonesian has climbed that mountain and taken this. Thank you, kind stranger. I wonder if you'll ever find out your face now features in 2 of my videos. But that's not all. I kept clicking and I found this. Exactly what I love. This perfect rectangle is one of the man-made lakes which also features in our map. This was part of the ancient city and we drew it based on our overlay in the second map lesson. And we can see that Although Indonesia is pretty green, this particular part of Java really has been taken over by mankind. Most of the trees are gone and replaced with farmland. There are, however, still large clumps of forest for us to draw. So thank you, Mr. Kolom Segaram, for this amazing drone shot. It's given us something to work with. So not only have we established that not the entire planet is covered in my favorite things, which are trees, but if we keep looking, we will see what we probably already know. Where you can find trees, you will often find water. For example, here, just 300 yards east of that drone shot is this. You can see it's not the same flat green as the farms around it. This green is a bit bushier. And you can also see that it takes a snaky path through the land, the exact same kind of snaking path that a river will take. Now, I haven't switched to terrain view yet, but I'm pretty sure that if I do, we'll see a river here. And clicky, clicky, click, click. Yes, this is a river. Of course it is, unrelated to trees, but while we're here, there are times when Google's terrain view might not show you that a river is there, which can be difficult if you are using overlay mod to draw your rivers. But if you look on satellite view, you can often see the line of trees that tell you where a river is, even if the river can't be seen itself in terrain view. Not sure what I mean? Well, check this here. We have the blue line of a river, and it kind of just starts out of nowhere. This could, of course, be where an underground pipe meets the surface, or even a natural spring. But if we switch to satellite view, what do we see? I don't know about you, but that looks like a load of trees following a river to me. Right, those are definitely trees, and that is a giveaway sign that a river, or at least a small stream, flows there. Not really relevant to what we're doing now, but worth a mention if your Google Maps isn't showing you rivers where you expect them to be. It's worth switching view and looking for the lovely trees instead. So, before I continue, I'm going to add something I've noticed other map makers do, and that's this. They draw out the field or farm boundaries, marking territory that they have maybe seen on Google Earth, or perhaps they are just trying to draw their own hometown area as realistically as possible. And that's fine. If you really are trying to get your map as close to real life as possible, then go for it. Tree lines do also often denote one property's boundary with another. And if you want to do that in your map, then do it. Again, it's your own map, baby. Do whatever makes you happy. Thing is, though, for me, I kind of think that by doing this, I'm then telling the player and city builder where the farms ought to be. If only a small portion of your map has those kinds of boundaries, then there's a very high chance that every single person building on your map is going to put their industry in those exact same spots. And as I said already, I don't like that. I want your city to be unique. Your industry should have the option to be in a different place from someone else's. So we're not going to draw this map like that. Not today, anyway. Another time, perhaps, but this time it's time to chop some wood. Goodbye, trees, goodbye. I'm very sorry. Now, we're almost started planting wood, but not quite. I know, right? What the farts? Honestly, when I started writing the script for this video, I thought it would be the easiest and quickest one. Boy, was I wrong. I feel like I've just spent 20 minutes talking about planting my seed, and we still ain't even started with it yet. We're almost there, though. Just one more thing, and when I do tell you it, you're going to be like, dude, WTF, bro? Seriously? You couldn't have told us this in lesson 2 when we were sorting the water? You waited until now? And the answer is yes, I did. So there. And what is this secret? Well, remember how in lesson 2 I made you wait forever for the water to reach the end of the map, and then I made you wait even longer to see if it would rise to meet the level it's supposed to reach? Remember how that took ages? Well, I didn't have to do that, and so neither did you. Now, before you cry and bash your hatred for me into the comments below, you should know I did that deliberately, because the whole point in that lesson was to get the rivers drawn right. But if you were to do this next trick without first getting the rivers right, then although the water via this trick will indeed automatically rise to the right level, if you've drawn a shitty river, then the water will just go back down again. And even if you haven't drawn a shitty river, well, it still might go down. So it was more important in lesson 2 to focus more on getting rivers drawn correctly than it was to just magically raise the rivers like some shitty fork in Noah. So anyway, sorry about that. However, for the sake of placing trees, I find it very, very important to only do the trees last. The reason being that, just like in lesson 2, the water can take forever to keep rising and rising. And the thing is that if you get impatient and plant your trees along the riversides, you will then likely find that as the waters continue to rise, your trees are now underwater, and you've got to then waste time going along and deleting all the trees again. If you've ever seen a map where there's a suspicious 100 yards gap between the forest and the water, I guarantee you that is what has happened. Either the map maker is planning ahead and deliberately not putting trees too close to the water because he knows the water is still rising, or he has done so, then the water has risen and he has had to go back along with the brush on super delete. So anyway, in order to avoid all that malarkey, we are now going to instantly rise the water to the height it's meant to be at. To do this, we're going to temporarily screw with the water sources a little. Now, without wasting too much time, because holy shit, oh my god, we still haven't planted any trees yet. But briefly recap. In Lesson 2, we learned that for this particular map, the maximum height for water is 680. Anything above that, and the map will flood. But also, for the sake of saving room for error, we set our max water levels at 675 instead. We also may or may not have added a much lower border sea level source at the far end of the map. It's done mostly just to help the map fill up quicker, but we also deliberately set that source much lower than the rest at 655. It's set much lower to avoid it pushing against the flow. Here it is, it looks like this. And finally, as we discussed in that lesson, the game itself takes whatever you have set as the lowest water source height and uses that height as the game's water height. That's why if you look at the edge of a map, you can often see this weird difference in water levels, because outside of the game map, the world map has its water set at 655. So that white line denotes what the game has set as the water level, as set by our lowest water source. So ignore that, because we also know we've set those other river sources at 675. So 675 is where we want the water to be before we start laying plank. If we don't get the water to that height, then lay trees anyway, then those trees may flood. So, to avoid this, we will first temporarily change this low source. We'll change it to 675 and the white line will jump up with it. And there we go, just like magic. It's almost as if I knew that was going to happen. Now we have that weird water height difference going the other way. The outer world map has filled water to the required height, but the inner game map is still lagging behind. And you know what? It may never get there, or maybe it will if you wait long enough, but it's not a risk worth taking. We want trees to be safe. So, next, the magic bit. First, press the tab key. This will bring up the secret developers menu. If you don't have the Dev menu enabled in-game, then you'll have to exit out and change your Steam settings. To do that, then come back in. Check the description below for instructions to do that. If you have enabled Dev menu, then congratulations, you are the very model of a modern major map maker. So press tab, then go up top and click simulation, then down a bit and click water. Now finally click water to sea level, and boom, look at that, the water finally made it to the top. Now, just so that I don't forget, I'm going to drop that sea source back down to the 655 it was at. Now, it's worth noting here that even if my river is perfect, the water here is likely going to go down over time. It won't drop too drastically, certainly not below what it was already at. But it's important we do set that back to 655, otherwise it will push against the flow of water, and we don't want that. Okay, now we can finally plant our bloody trees. So, back to that drone shot we saw earlier, and I'm going to use that to place some of my favorite trees. And this, right here in-game, is that little rectangle lake we've just been looking at. And this, right here, is what it looks like when I throw so much wood at it, and even your mum gets wet. Just painty McPaintface. Using my favorite big-ass trees, just painting, alt-tabbing back and forth, checking and painting. It doesn't have to be perfect, of course. Go wild, if you like. It's worth reminding you at this point that if you do use the Anarchy mod, then make sure you've turned it off before you start throwing wood. Otherwise, you're going to end up with trees at the bottom of your rivers, and then a pain in the arse deleting them all again. So turn off Anarchy. Okay, done that. Now, of course, don't just use the same trees everywhere. Variety is nice, and the different colors make the map look that bit more natural. I've lined most of my rivers with alder, but I've also thrown in patches of hickory and oak, a wee blob of pine and a dash of chestnut. So, as I'm delicately trying not to spam my trees literally everywhere, I should remind you that the methods I've used here are kind of dependent on this being a flat map. But on a mountainous map, it really helps if you use the terrain to place your trees. Little gullies and tiny valleys are in the real world where water would flow down into, and so also is where the trees will be. For a better example of what that looks like, look at this. This is my map for Karakoram, Mongolia, and you'll see that in the mountainous region, which is a good quarter of the map, although I have put some trees up higher, maybe still a bit too many if I'm being honest, but in reality the majority of the trees are down in its valleys and gullies, and this, I think, looks more natural than just placing trees on every possible inch of land. This, of course, does not mean that you shouldn't cover your mountains in trees. There are many parts of this world where trees will climb all over any mountain they find, right to the very top. Mountains do not beat trees. Trees will go wherever the hell they please, and the mountain ain't gonna do shit about it. As mentioned earlier, if you're not sure, a good idea is to check out the real-world area online. Fly into it from Google Earth if you want to see how the tree be when the tree be up high. One final thing, but on an arid map, it may be worthwhile using more bushes and shrubs than trees. I say this because it looks more natural. However, I often don't do this myself because the bushes also pop out of existence when zoomed out too far, and well, we've been through that. Again, it's up to you and where you balance realism with art. Now, are we done with trees? Honestly, I'm not sure. I think I may have forgotten something. I'm not even sure. I didn't set out to spend this much time blabbering on about trees, but Jesus Franklin Christ, I've done it anyway. I know I said I love trees, but bloody hell, I think I've talked myself into going off them now. Stupid things. Just standing there doing nothing, sometimes for centuries. Absolutely useless things. I don't pay any tax. No contribution to society. Literally thicker than two short planks. Yeah, fuck trees. Anyway, I think we're done with the resources part of this video. What's next? Oh, that's right. Climates. Glad I wrote that down earlier, else I'd be lost now. Honestly, I started writing this script on Monday. It's bloody Thursday now, and I got to admit my head is now stuffed very far up my own arse. I'm dizzy. Trees, bloody more trees, resources, and trees. Honestly, if I never see another tree for the rest of my life, or at the very least until after the weekend, I'll be happy. I think after this video I'm gonna go home and just burn everything I have that's made of wood. Anyway, yes, climates. Now this bit will definitely be very quick. Do you know why? Because I don't know shit about climates, that's why. Well, I don't not know anything. I know some stuff, but I have to be honest, I haven't spent any time really messing around with the climate editor. However, I did recently write down what all the prefab climates are set at, just so I can have a better idea what temperature to set when making my map. This is Indonesia, so we're going hot, 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 baby. Or at least as hot as the game will let me, which really isn't that hot at all. I gotta ask, Colossal Order, are you watching this? Be honest with me here, what was the shitting point? There are, hold on, let me count them. There are 14 preset climates to choose while building the map. Okay, but so many of them are practically the same, I gotta ask. Why bother? For example, there is Lakeland. Lakeland ranges from -15 to 26 degrees. But then there's Tampere, which is -13 to 24 degrees Celsius. Just why bother? They are so close together, it barely makes a difference. And then there's River Delta, -5 to 33 degrees. But also there's Waterway Pass, which is -5 to 35 degrees. And it's just like, really? This is what you spent your time on. Again, have you people never heard of the equator? I know it gets cold in Finland, but you are at least aware of the existence of Africa, right? You may not have been to Indonesia, but surely at some point you've heard about it, right? None of you ever been to Thailand for a ping pong show? Trust me, it gets a bit clammy in them there hot places. Let's just quickly Google Indonesian weather right now for a quick look-see, and see, it's bloody hot. It's 7 p.m. in Indonesia right now, and it's 29 bloody degrees, 29 in the evening. This isn't middle of the day heat. This is 7 hours later, and your pants are now 50% cotton and 50% ball sweat. And that's just today's. Tomorrow it promises to rain, but also promises to go up another 6 degrees to 33. That's mental, that really is. There are no hot weather climate presets in this map editor. Zero. There are shit tons for places which may as well be the same, but bugger all for places that get proper hot. Not that it really matters, I suppose. To be honest, other than superficial shit like suddenly all the Sims are wearing bikinis to go shopping, I don't suppose it would have much difference on the game. I just find it weird, that there are all these similar climates, but absolutely nothing for the places about 50% of the population of planet Earth lives in. Anyway, that's my little rant over. And I did say this was going to be quick, so for the sake of letting everyone know what the climates are, and this is worth recording and being written down like it is in the description below, because I couldn't find many other places online that had this info. Here we go. Here are the climates from which you can choose for your beautiful, beautiful map. Continental climates. Coral ridges, 3 to 34 degrees Celsius. Great Highlands, -3 to 19 degrees Celsius. Lakeland, -15 to 26 degrees Celsius. Mountain Village, -12 to 27 degrees Celsius. Tampere, -13 to 24 degrees Celsius. Polar climate, Sweeping Plains, -4 to 23 degrees Celsius. Twin Mountain, -4 to 15 degrees Celsius. Windy Fjords, -6 to 18 degrees Celsius. Temperate climates. Archipelago Haven, 8 to 30 degrees Celsius. Barrier Island, 10 to 31 degrees Celsius. River Delta, -5 to 33 degrees Celsius. San Francisco, 5 to 28 degrees Celsius. Sunshine Peninsula, 11 to 27 degrees Celsius. Waterways Pass, -5 to 35 degrees Celsius. Tropical climate, bugger all. Sweet Fanny Adams, 100% less than 1. So there we have it. Those are all the possible climate choices when making your map. For this map, I'm going to choose the continental coral ridges. Although it only gets the second highest temperature at 34 degrees Celsius, the highest, Waterways Pass, also dips below 0 to -5, which means it'll get snow too, and Indonesia does not get snow. It gets heat, mosquitoes, and motorcycle taxis with a death wish. So how do we select our chosen climate? First, up to the top left again and click Climate. Then over to the top right and click the box next to Load Climate Prefab, and now scroll to our weapon of choice. For me it is coral ridges, and might as well save the game. Always remember to save often. Because shit happens and I do not need any more excuses to pull out my hair and go more bald. I'm sorry for not getting too deep into making your own climate, but I have to be honest, like I said, we're 4 days into making this video and I'm losing all willpower. Also, and this is more important, at the point when I'm making this video, October 25th, 2024, the game itself was only patched and the climate editor finally fixed just like 2 days ago. I haven't had the time to get stuck in and learn things yet, and frankly, I don't want to. Maybe I'll come back and do that properly at some point in the future. I probably won't though, so don't hold your breath. But for the moment, we're on the home stretch now, folks. We're almost done. Remember how in the last video I said this one would include detailing? Well, other than some half-assed attempts at me chucking rocks into the dirt that you are watching now, there really isn't much you're going to see me do. I'm going to detail this wee lake a little bit though, since it's in the opening square, but even then, I'm only doing it because you're watching. It's like when my wife walks into the office and I'm suddenly reminded that I am not the boss of me now and I have to quickly Alt-Tab back to Excel or whatever it was I was supposed to be doing. As soon as you stop watching, I'm going to stop detailing it. Look, see? Nothingness. Just an empty void with zero detailing being done. But anyway, if you're curious, the thing you're watching me do right now is plopping a mixture of rocks and rubble piles. It's not much. You will need the Anarchy mod downloaded and turned on for this bit. And since we're in the editor, you will also have to exit back to Options and tick the wee box that says Anarchy Components in Editor. That will allow you to place your rocks on top of each other like this. Looks a bit better, doesn't it? I guess we could do a tad more, seeing as this is an apparent guide to doing that. As per literally always, if you do want to get a good idea what to do, then Google Maps will let us see. I found this street view image of the nearby river, and if we look at its banks, we can indeed see that they are lined with wee rocks. So let's draw some of them in there then. Mix in some more rubble for that added effect. I've found that mixing and matching different assets such as this can help add to the effect. Even if those assets have such obscure names as Concrete Pile 1, it doesn't matter what it's called. Just play around with these and you'll find you can soon get a mixture that looks pretty natural. And look, there's also some trash. So for some added realism, let's add a tad of rubbish to our map too. Here it is. You can find all these items in the Add Object menu on screen. There's a ton of things to choose from, so best way to find out what you like is just click and see. Almost done. What little detailing you will see me do here is I'm basically just trying to hide the abrupt change from the sand surface that I'm drawing to the grass. There are mods you can download which can help blend this in, but I prefer not to make my maps reliant on other mods. Mods break and then I have to fix the map, which I can't be bothered with, so any detailing I do is using the base game only. This sand surface switches immediately to grass, and I think it looks absolutely bloody awful. I hate it. So the only thing I'm doing here is attempting to hide this. I'm placing piles and boulders at whatever I see to be the ugliest point. One thing I am also doing is using the smooth brush. This will make any asset I place abide by the terrain it's on instead of sticking out at a weird right angle. I'm not going to do the whole riversides though. I got to be honest with you. I am absolutely not going to spend 3 days going along every riverside. I made a conscious decision not to focus on too much detailing in this video. Why? Well, after having said that I would in Lesson 3, I had a look around at what else was available, and you know what? All your answers already exist in another video made by my good friend Sully. He stands 17th in line to the Welsh crown, and when not waiting for the first 16 to die so he can rightly sit on his throne as the King of Wales, he spends his time making such beautifully detailed maps that I honestly felt bad at the shit I chuck out. See that bit earlier where I mentioned using the smooth brush to make the piles abide by the laws of physics and gravity? Well, I myself learned that in Sully's video. So I'm putting a link to Sully's video on screen and also in the description below. Go there, watch his video, be soothed by the tones of that beautiful voice and learn about detailing. So thank you, Mr. Sully, for giving me an excuse to end this video early. I'd also like to give a quick shout out to many fine denizens of the city's skylines, modding and Discord communities who were kind enough to answer my questions and provide some information for this video that I wasn't smart enough to think about myself. So, hello to everyone there too. Now for this map here, ladies and gents, we're almost done, almost ready to publish. There are some finishing touches, of course, and we'll cover those in Map Making Guide number 5, Preparing and Publishing, where I will continue to surprise you by going off on tangents you had no idea were possible, and will wish you had never learned by the time it's finished, such as my reinvention of the rabbit and my insistence that 7 square triangles. So stay tuned for that one, subscribe of course so that you don't miss it when it comes, which with any luck will be at some point between now and before the slow, inevitable heat death of our sun. Finally, just in case you were wondering, the city footage you've been subjected to during this video was my own city built on the map, Drumadoon, Isle of Arran, Scotland. The link to that is also in the description below. Thanks for watching. I have been, am still, and am determined to continue being Ancient Swan. Good.